Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency and Money podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm Tony Guerra, pharmacist and publisher, bringing you help succeeding in your career, health, and wealth before, during, and after residency. You can sign up for the email list at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com to get your free LOI template or get editing help working one-on-one with me at residency.teachable.com. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I wanted to talk to you guys about preparing for residency. And again, I have the free preparation course. It's just if you want to do it yourself, the code for it or coupon code is memorizing 2024. And that's the one in the top left. So you go to residency.teachable.com. And the DIY residency preparation course, that'll take the $95 coupon. That's free for you if you want to do it yourself. But I've been getting emails that people want me to do it for them, the LOI. And I don't write LOIs, like I won't do it from scratch. But if you follow that course and write the letter of intent and you want me to just edit it, like fix it, like I'm not going to teach you how to do it. That's something that maybe you would do in like a semester-long residency course or something at your college, which some colleges unfortunately don't have. That's why I've released this course. But I just fix it. So I've done over 500 of these LOIs. So I know exactly what it needs to be. I send it back to you like, hey, you're missing this, this, and this. And then we fix it for you. And if you want my one-on-one help, now that's going down to the next course, which is Residency LOI One-on-One Help and Interview Prep course. That has all of the interview materials in it. And again, you say, well, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? Like I haven't gotten an interview yet and so forth. Well, the interview rates are quite high. It's over 80% that you're going to get an interview. And then we are not yet at the massive pharmacy student dip, which will be next year and the year after that. I don't know what the numbers are yet for the last cycle. Those come out sometime in November. And I don't know that those will necessarily affect you any because that's 3 years ahead from where we are now. But let me just give you some numbers to help you out here. When you began, for last year's students, 4 years before they graduated, 12,143 students were accepted to pharmacy schools. Now, that doesn't mean they all enrolled, and that doesn't mean they all graduated in 4 years. Some graduated in 3 in the 3-year programs. Some graduated in 4. Some never graduated at all. So I'm just giving you a relative number. Okay, so that was 12,143, and that's the pool that was kind of going into last year's residency cycle. This year, that number has gone down about 600. So it's 11,520 came in 4 years ago. That's how many were accepted. Okay. And we'll be applying for residencies with you guys this year. Okay. So this is the class of 2025. However, there is a huge dip that happens the next 2 years. And again, I don't know if that dip continues or if it doesn't. I won't know until the end of November, probably. But just to give you some perspective, residency applications are up like 10% this year. But what pains me, and this is the one thing, my daughters are 13, I will absolutely talk to my daughters about and make sure that they do, is that the number of schools that students are applying to is only 2.5. Okay. There is an 86% acceptance rate to pharmacy school. That means that you are treating this as if you are in a situation where there is very few positions and very many applicants. Okay. There are almost 1 million applications going to medical schools. Okay. And their overall acceptance rate is like 50% or something like that. But the individual schools, it's like 4 and 5%, crazy low numbers. And so the like average GPA is like 3.8 for medical school, where it's like 3.3 for pharmacy school and so on. But the point I want to make is if you're kind of in that, gosh, inflation has really hit me. If you look at, let's take the VA in Iowa, Des Moines, it's a little less than $50,000 for your stipend. But if you go to NYU, and I don't know how to pronounce it, Langone, so I'm going to say Langone, in Manhattan, it is also around $50,000. But the cost of living between those two places is completely different. Okay. So if you're like, look, man, I gotta work. I need a job. And with the news that, Walgreens is going to shut down 1,200 stores or whatever it is, maybe that's something that you're like, okay, well, I really want to kind of put off residency. I know that everybody says you should do it the year you graduate and so on, but I just can't afford it or something like that. That's fine. And the reason I'm going to tell you why that's fine, when we go from this year of 11,520, next year only 9,700 students were accepted to pharmacy school. That's a drop of almost 2,000. Okay. And then that went on. It was weird. It was like 9,743 or something like that. It was the same, like almost the same number the next year. That means that there is again, it would make sense that it would be a lot easier to get a residency in the next cycle, not this year cycle, but next cycle, when you have only 9,700 who are accepted to pharmacy schools, and you're talking about almost a, what, 15% drop, almost 20, in the number of people that are just going into pharmacy school. So again, popularity of residency will go up if it gets tougher to get pharmacy jobs. That'll happen. But I just wanted to tell you that, don't freak out like, if I don't get it this year, it'll never happen. Actually, if you don't get it this year, it's much more likely to happen next year. Now, they do skew toward the newest graduates, but that gap has narrowed a lot. And it's not so unlikely for somebody that graduated in a different year to get residency. Okay. Well, that's kind of the overall market, but I guess I'm just saying that the one thing I'm going to tell my kids is, look, I want you applying to 10 to 12 schools so that you can figure out, like, what kind of a deal can I get? Like, okay, well, I want to apply to this school that costs this much, and then to find out that this private school actually have tuition that might even be lower than the in-state school. That may or may not be true. But if you're only applying to between 2 and 3 schools on average, that means that you have very little comparison. That means that there's very little pressure on the school to give you a deal. Whereas if you apply to 12 schools, you really get an idea of what it is. And many places are giving out-of-state to in-state tuition to out-of-staters, or many pharmacy schools are. And then you've got a pharmacy school that'll just give you, your first year free, tuition free. So there's a lot of things going on that case. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about what I really wanted to get to. I just put this here because the reason I made the password or the coupon memorizing 2024 is that the memorizing pharmacology book that, oh my gosh, it's been 8 years since I wrote it. Uh, that really is just kind of cool. It started my author journey and it was just fun. The one I'm most proud of, though, and I'm really excited about, is this one called Memorizing Multiplication, where I bring a dog into it and it makes it easier for kids to learn multiplication. Kids that really want to listen to something instead of visual. But anyway, okay, that's a total tangent. All right, well, let's talk about the pre-interview application scoring because I think there's a big misunderstanding with the letter of intent, and that the letter of intent is just kind of a checkbox that you are clicking. But Brandon Dyson of TLDR Pharmacy said it best. He's like, the LOI is the only place on the application that you get to be yourself and let them know about who you are and why you're different. And I've said over and over again that the reason people get rejected from residency is because they are forgotten. Okay. And you're like, well, wait a minute. What if I'm the best candidate? Well, there are a lot of best candidates. And really, it just comes down to, okay, well, in addition to your score being high on the pre-interview application scoring, how memorable were you? Did you get an advocate? Okay. And I tell people all the time, the most valuable thing you can do at mid-year is not that crazy madness where you have those 3 sessions of the residency showcase, right? That's for them to show themselves off. You want to actually make a genuine connection with a resident from the place that you want to go on the next day. So what most people don't look at, they just go in, they're like, I only have 2 days off for my appy. I just have to be at the residency showcase. That's the most important thing. No, not in terms of getting an interview. The most important thing is meeting people and having genuine conversations with them. Well, where does that happen? It happens in 2 places. One place it happens is at the social gatherings afterward. People's guards are kind of down, and if you aren't pushy about it, you can really get to kind of, and then you're on the question asking side, like you just really genuinely want to know how it's going. They'll get to know you and they'll like you a little bit better. It helps that beverages are there. But the day when the residents are presenting their posters, they are all alone. Nobody goes to go look at their posters, right? Everybody's flying out of town. Now, some of the professors will come by and say, hey, great to see you and all that stuff. But really, that's when you can make the genuine connections. And so if you go on the third day of ASHP mid-year, and it's the third, when I say third day, I mean like day one of showcase, day two of showcase, and then residency posters is day after. That is the day that you really, really can make a genuine connection in a place that you want and just I don't want to as much say get to the top of the pile as much as I want to say that you are now genuinely in a position where you are making an impact, okay? Where you are, talking to somebody and you are really getting down what that place is like, okay? All right, well, let's take a look at how they do the pre-scoring. And oops, okay. So let's start with this kind of nugget. This is from the interview course, the second course, where I work one-on-one with you. But I just want to tell you what it is, because this is just important. All right, so the first thing is forecast, just make sure you have everything, okay? Then the resident selection committee, which is going to probably be a resident, is going to be the one that's scoring you. I know you think that you're addressing it to the director, which you should, but you have to be careful and don't say, I guess, don't talk about residents as if they're kind of this side thing. The resident is reading it. Like that's the person that reads it. And then the residents are the ones that come together and like, okay, we're scoring these guys. And now we come to the director and we have our meeting. But the director isn't sitting up all night with his coffee or her coffee and sitting like, oh, okay, well, let me read through all these hundreds of applications. It just doesn't work that way. Okay. So there might be 2 people reviewing your score and they might be doing it on their lunch break or something like that. There's no paid position for residency director. Like it's an additional thing that they do, usually out of the goodness of their heart. But it's not like this job where it's like, oh, it's residency director is like a job. Like there's no such thing, right? So the score sheets are very site specific. And if you can get the score sheet, that is a huge advantage because then not only can you tailor your letter of intent and your whole application towards that sheet, you can also realize, and I've had this happen all the time, where somebody's like, wow, I don't even make it past first base at that place. Like what they want, I just don't have. They care so much about GPA. I'll give you an example. There's one place that scores your GPA from a 0 to a 10. Okay. And then there's another one that scores your GPA as yes or no. Did they get above a 3.2? Yes. All right. They're in, right? They're in for the next, all of the other things we want to score. No. All right. Well, we're just not going to take that person. Okay. So when you're looking at it, if you're a high GPA person, then that might be a place for you. If you're a 3.2 GPA person, then on at the one site, you're getting like a 5 or 6 out of 10. And at the other site, you got a yes. You are equal to all of the other places. And this works really well for somebody that minimized their GPA, but maximized their like leadership activities and volunteering and all the things that I personally think really matter, like the actual business of being a resident and doing those things. Okay. All right. So let's kind of take a look at what the scoring is going to be. So GPA, yeah, it's kind of annoying that it is one of them. I think it's a valuable indicator to the extent that it says you can work hard at something, right? But the communication skills and the letter of intent is probably the second most one because once they try to read your letter, if it's so hard to read or it's just like they're like, oh wow, another chat GPT letter of intent. I wish to express my sincere, and if you ask ChatGPT to write your letter for you, it will start with those words. And why? Because it's taking all of the available materials, which all say, I want to express my sincere interest, right? And then it makes the second sentence, I met you and the other residents at the residency showcase. Okay, well, you've done absolutely nothing different than someone else who did the same thing. Okay, you're interested and you met them. All right, so did everybody else, right? What you want to do is you want to say, what is it about them that you're really excited about? And it's just like dating to some extent where you just have this draw or magnetism towards certain people because they have certain attributes. And so it should really clearly be that you are looking at them because of their blank program. Let me give you an example, like the PACT or the PACT program in the ambulatory care teams with the VA. That tends to be a big draw for a lot of people. If you see that a lot of their clinical rotations, especially if it's some group or a site that is very prescriptive. Like I think NYU is one of the ones that's extremely prescriptive. Like you get 2 electives, like 8 weeks of elective total or something like that. Where Vanderbilt, it's like 8 weeks of prescriptive and the rest is elective. It's like the exact opposite. So those are things that you should really know about the place. And so you're matching. It's like if you did cardio and neuro and peds and they have cardio and neuro and peds, it's like, oh my gosh, look what you have and look what I have. We're such a great match together, right? Your work experience, if you want to do this, you can. But if you go look on LinkedIn at the residents, and I know people do this, they'll look at the actual residents' LinkedIn and they'll look at their work experience at the very top hospital sites, it is very unlikely that a resident got that position without hospital work experience. It's just really rare. So you say, can I have retail experience? Well, that's experience. But if you're applying for a hospital job, a residency in a hospital, and you have retail experience, they're going to wonder why you're not applying to a community residency. Shouldn't you have gotten hospital experience? And I get it. You're like, man, I got all this stuff to do. It's just really convenient and so on. Well, when it comes to the job you're going to actually do in the hospital, if you already have hospital experience, then they're like, okay, well, when they're doing their hours on the weekend or they're, doing their work or whatever, then we don't the on-ramping isn't as hard. Okay. Leadership, teaching, and research, those are, 3 of the 5 pillars that are super important. And the rubric is usually like leadership presidents get certain number of points, vice president gets certain number of points, and then it kind of goes down from there. Teaching, did you actually teach the class? Were you a TA? Those types of things. And then research, did you present a poster at ASHP? And the expectation is that you probably did. And then again, while all of this is in your CV, what you're pulling from your CV is those things that match. It's like, okay, well, on your menu, I see that you have ambulatory care in cardiovascular and also with hypertension clinic. I also have that experience. So you pull that. Or I taught the cardio module in my, in one of my appies when I was working with one of the professors and so on. Okay. Presentations and publications kind of goes with research a little bit, your extracurriculars and volunteering. And depending on where you go, like if you're going to a relatively low socioeconomic area where the residency is, and you have volunteering on there, that's much more important to them that you're doing things out of the goodness of their heart, because so are they, than it is maybe at one of those large academic institutions where they're like, look, we just want to make sure you can make it through these clinical residencies and that you have that kind of clinical experience. Okay. So when they're scoring you, they're not scoring you like as a person. They're really scoring you so that they don't waste a residency spot on someone that's just not going to make it. And there is, I think personally, there is kind of a bias right now because the NAPLEX national rates and MPGE rates are relatively low. And I don't mean to do this, but when I was in pharmacy school, right, it was mid high 90s for the NAPLEX pass rate. And now you're closer to 1 in 5 won't pass. Now, the expectation is that, okay, well, if you're the resident applicant, then you're probably at the top of the class and so on and so forth, and that shouldn't be as much of a problem. But there's a significant gap in NAPLEX and MPJE success from one college to the other. So if you have a low NAPLEX school, I personally think it's important that you make clear all of the preparation that you are doing to ensure that you're going to pass the NAPLEX, because no one wants somebody that doesn't pass the NAPLEX and then all of the work that you are supposed to be doing as a pharmacist, because now you're just an overpaid tech. Well, I don't think techs could ever be overpaid, to be honest. But now all of your fellow residents are picking up your work. So not only are you trying to be a resident and do your work, not only do you have to re-study for the NAPLEX or MPJE, but now that group that you were kind of bonding with, you've just given them all more work. And that does not go well. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to integrate like an RX prep or something like that into each of your appies. And it's something I do every time somebody comes to an appy here. I'm like, you really need to set up a plan, take half of the RX prep modules and put the module that you'll do each of the next appies. So you'll get at least half of the studying done. And then the rest of it you can get done in those last couple of months. So anyway, this is the application scoring, kind of broad strokes. And then this is what something would look like where they're actually filling it out. I should have looked up the timestamps ahead of time. I go on and on and on because all of these are so important. But there's going to be a scoring cutoff where you either get offered an interview, you get delayed an interview, or they don't offer you an interview. There's actually a fourth, which is you get ghosted, which is horrible. But I know how much time you put into your application, but when it comes to hundreds of applications and there's only 4 residents to do it, sometimes they just don't have time or it gets lost in the shuffle and so on. But let's take a look at what it would actually look like. Okay, so this is, maybe you have like your pharmacy education, the minimum GPA is 3.2, and from 3.2 up, you get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Maybe you have a graduate degree that's not pharmacy related. Maybe you get a couple extra points for that. For your retail experience, maybe you get a point for a year. In hospital, you get 2 points for a year. Okay, if it's only seasonal, maybe you only get half points or something. Extracurriculars, a couple half points each, and then president versus elect versus a chair and so forth. Honors don't really get a ton. Publications do. Then they'll rate your letter of intent and CV. Sometimes the structure and grammar is super important to them. And then, really, one of the most important things is the references. So, we're talking about your recommendations. Something that's going to happen this year that probably didn't happen in many of the past years is a lot of your recommenders will actually use ChatGPT to make your recommendation. And you might say that's horrible, but in listening to an AI book I've been listening to, in general, a letter of recommendation written by ChatGPT with inputs from the professor is actually probably a lot better. So you really want to hope that your professor is kind of in on that kind of thing, and that's going to have it because not only will it be grammatically right and syntactically right, but it's going to have a lot of the things that they want to see. And it can, because if they really know you well, all they have to do is take all of the information when they graded you in their appy and to put it in there. And again, I highly recommend that before you ask for a recommendation, that you ask the recommender this question in these words: Can you write a strong letter for me? Okay. And if the answer is no, then you save yourself a lot of heartache. Because what a lot of people find out because they, kind of ostrich in the dirt, they didn't want to ask, is that they had a toxic recommendation. That is, they got along with a couple and then they had to get that third one, and then that person just blew them out of the water. And you're like, well, certainly it would never happen from somebody that's a professor at my college. And actually, they're just being honest. They're just saying, this is the experience I had with the person. And so the residency site might go 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but with the number of applications they'll still continue to get this year, they might not say that. So anyway, but this is the specific kind of rubric that I know a lot of people were emailing me about, like, hey, can you do a rubric? Well, this is what it looks like. But really want to find the rubric for them, and you're like, well, how would I find the rubric for a residency? Well, the residency manual actually has the rubric because as a resident, you're going to be grading the people coming in, and so this rubric does exist. Okay. All right, well, let's go back to the beginning here and just kind of let you know that, this DIY residency preparation course, it's robust. It says $95, but if you use Memorizing, Memorizing 2024, you can get that free. If you really want to work with me, you sign up for the residency LOI one-on-one help and interview prep course and just email me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com with the letter of intent that you created from the DIY course. And again, my hope is that you're going to send me a page and a half, 2 pages at most, and I'll cut it down to a page if you want. But really, it's a lot easier to cut something down than it is to build something up. And again, I think that in this age of ChatGPT, there's going to be a lot of frustration among the residents. But the reality is that they could actually probably put your letter of intent into chat and just say, Chat, does this look like something you would write? And ChatGPT would go, oh, yeah, I would always use that first paragraph. And then they could, see if you were being honest about it or not. But again, you know, I think the letter of intent is quite reflective. That is, when you start writing a letter of intent to maybe like UNC or Cedars Sinai or the Iowas or, one of those ones that's really kind of harder to get. Um, you really want to make sure that you're not going there because of the prestige, but rather that it's a good fit. It's like going after somebody that's really attractive versus somebody that has a really good soul. And I was just listening to this. I don't know how it came up on my YouTube or whatever, but that really wealthy people, like generationally wealthy people that are really good looking, tend to have a partner that is not necessarily that good looking. And it was kind of one of those like, well, why would that be? They're so rich, they're so good looking, or whatever. And because they care so much about um, the money kind of staying and having somebody that just is a quality person, and kind of thinking more long term, it just works out that way. So anyway, maybe that was too much of a stretch, but there's a reason it's called the match, because you're really trying to match up with a year that you really want to enjoy. Well, enjoy, but a year that is something that is going to build you up, that you're really going to be better for after you finish. So, tonythepharmacist at gmail.com if anything was unclear. But again, it just makes me happy when I get to work with people, and I've started doing some of the LOIs already. And it just kind of like I get to live vicariously through you guys. And because I do have such a high acceptance rate, and it's not just because I'm doing it, it's more because the person that would actually seek help, that's the kind of person that's going to be a pretty good student and do a pretty good job at this. But it always just match day is just super exciting for me because those people succeed and I can kind of live through their successes. Anyway, that's it for today. Just let me know if I can be of help. This has been the Pharmacy Residency and Money Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. You might want to check out our available residency audiobooks at pharmacyresidencypodcast.com/books, or you can get your first book free if you've never been on Audible before. You can work one-on-one with me to get a better residency that will better suit your career, health, and wealth at residency.teachable.com. Feel free to send an invite to Tony PharmD on LinkedIn or email me at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. Music was by Policy.